The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Though the world looked markedly different in the years before the breaking, the devastation wrought by male Aes Sedai drastically reshaped continents and oceans, with 10 human nations emerging in the Westlands from the ashes of their fallen civilization. In time, humanity recovered as best they could, yet the era of plentiful peace was no more, leading to violence, division, and competition for resources, with these 10 nations rising, falling, and transforming throughout the Third Age, forming new realms in the Free Years, until the legendary hero Arthur Hawkwing united nearly all the Westlands under his rule, even extending his domain beyond the sea to Shan-Chan, the faraway continent of the West. Yet when Hawkwing died without an heir in 994 FY, his empire fell to infighting, as every would-be ruler in the Westlands attempted to claim the mantle of successor, or else carve out their own independent territory. From 994 to 1117 FY, the War of the 100 Years wrought chaos and death throughout the land, until at last the fighting ended, leaving 24 nations and 3 independent cities in place of the former empire. Over the next 1,000 years, the realms of Almoth, Goaban, Karalane, Ironbell, Kintara, Maredo, Marhadan, Hardon, Mosara, and Malkir were lost, while Aradoman, Andor, Kyrian, Taraban, Gildon, Amadisia, Altara, Mirandi, Ilian, and Tyr survived, along with the borderland nations of Shinar, Arafel, Kandor, and Saldeia. There were also the city-states of Farmading, Mayen, and Tarvalin. Established in 1096 FY, Aradoman was created through an alliance of powerful rulers and wealthy merchants during the War of the 100 Years, with their first king, Shalon Lazari, ascending to the throne in 1116 FY. Rather than inheriting the throne, kings were elected by the Council of Merchants and could be deposed when a strong majority of 75% voted in opposition. Claiming independence soon after Arthur Hawkwing's death in 994 FY, Ishara Castlane was crowned the first Queen of Andor, establishing an unbroken line of female rulers which lasted over 1,000 years. Sitting upon the Lion Throne in the capital of Caemlyn, the rulers of Andor were closely allied to the city-state of Tarvalin, establishing a tradition where the female heir was sent to study with the Aes Sedai before succeeding as ruler. A powerful realm in the center of the Westlands, Andor was the oldest, largest, and most populous nation of the new era, with the greatest, best-trained army outside the borderlands. Aside from the famous, beautiful city of Caemlyn, Andor was also home to a great white bridge from the Age of Legends, built from abnormally strong white glass which resisted nearly all forms of damage. Though much of the realm remained loyal to the Queen throughout its history, the far western region of the Two Rivers, bordering the Mountains of Mist, eventually grew estranged from the capital, with its people unaware they were part of a larger nation. Having forgotten much of their history, the Two Rivers was once known as the Kingdom of Manetherin, with the village of Emond's Field rising from the site of their last battle, where King Aemon fought to the death, defending their realm from Trolloc invasion. Founded after the Trolloc Wars, the nation of Tova, ruled by a group of noble counselors, eventually fell to Arthur Hawkwing, and following his death, attempted to re-establish their independence. Yet this was not to be, as dissidents assassinated the last descendants of the ruling counselors, sparking a civil war that left Matrain Comkill as first king of Kyrian, a nation named after its capital city. A realm whose politics centered around the game of houses, assassinations, betrayals, and plots of all kinds were commonplace, with their rulers often putting their petty schemes above the well-being of the people and even their own best interests. With their people claiming a heritage that extended back to the Age of Legends, Taraban was founded by 3 nobles in 1006 FY, who once ruled the regional government under Arthur Hawkwing. After the fall of the Empire and death of one of these nobles, the remaining 2 agreed to share power, with Lady Tazenia Narenhal ruling as queen, while Lord Harren Masid took the title Panarch. By the year 500 NE, these leadership positions were divided exclusively by gender, with a male rising to become king, while a female Panarch was elected by an assembly of lords. After failing to re-establish the old kingdom of Dolan, a group of prominent nobles from 4 major houses founded the nation of Gildan in 1109 FY, with Kirin Almeida becoming its first king, sat upon the light-blessed throne, while the others served in the Crown High Council. Established in 1023 FY, Amadisia was founded by Lord Sental Ramoth, a direct descendant of the last king of Carindor, which fell during the War of the Second Dragon from 939 to 943 FY. Though Lord Ramoth originally tried to re-establish Carindor in 1015 FY, the nation was no longer recognized as a unifying power, and so he created the new realm of Amadisia in its place. Though Amadisian rulers once held great power, their authority diminished over the years, as the independent military organization known as the Children of the Light established their headquarters in the realm's capital city of Amador. Enemies of the Dark One and everything they associated with him, the Children of the Light were the true power in Amadisia, making it the only nation where Aes Sedai and channeling the One Power was entirely outlawed. A successor state to the nation of Shiota, established after the Trolloc Wars, Altara was founded by Lord Madden Todande in 1112 FY, but by the year 102 of the New Era, fell into a state of decentralized authority lasting over 8 centuries, with no house able to claim the Throne of Winds for more than 2 generations, leaving power in the hands of local rulers rather than a single monarch. A small nation ruled by a figurehead monarch, Mirandi was founded in 1047 FY by Lady Catherine du Catalan Acorrael, who ruled for less than a year before she was assassinated. For centuries, they rotated through a succession of short-lived kings and queens until their authority was all but gone, with true power remaining in the hands of local lords who swore allegiance to their monarch only to the extent it was necessary to deter invasion from foreign powers. When Lord Nikolai Mersenios Denbalin captured the city of Ilion in 1094 FY, he founded a powerful nation of the same name, becoming their first king wearing the laurel crown. With their ruler advised and his power checked by a council of 9 and assemblage, whose members were elected by merchants and guilds, Ilion was known for hosting the Great Hunt of the Horn, a famous event where mighty adventurers attempted to find the Horn of Valir, an ancient relic from a previous age which had the power to summon the greatest heroes of history from the dead, so they might fight for the forces of light. Ruled by a council of high lords, Tyr was founded soon after the death of Arthur Hawkwing, becoming one of the richest nations in the Westlands, though its wealth was concentrated exclusively with the aristocratic elite, who viewed commoners as lesser beings, drawing a stark contrast between the classes, which acted and dressed differently while subject to separate laws and traditions. A realm with an important and ancient heritage, Tyr was mentioned as a part of the Dragon Reborn prophecy, saying, "The Stone of Tyr will never fall till Kalendor is wielded by the dragon's hand. The Stone of Tyr will never fall till the people of the dragon come." The men and women of the nation, therefore, believed it their duty to defend the royal fortress called the Stone of Tyr and protect the crystal sword Kalendor in order to prevent the dragon from returning to power. Knowing the importance of the borderland region, the 5 northern governors who ruled under Arthur Hawkwing met after his death and agreed to form the 5 allied nations of Saldaea, Kandor, Arafel, Shinar, and Malkir in order to protect the south from the great blight beyond the mountains of Doom. Spending centuries fighting Trollocs and other shadow spawn who served the Dark One, the warriors of the borderlands comprised the greatest, most well-trained armies in the Westlands. However, after 1,000 years on the front lines of battle, the nation of Malkir was lost in 955 NE as a result of internal strife and betrayal, leading to their invasion and conquest by Shadow Spawn. Then there was the city-state of Farmading, an ancient land with a history dating back to the Age of Legends, where a magic ter'angreal called the Guardian prevented Aes Sedai from using the One Power. As for the city-state of Mayenne, they declared their independence in 1004 FY, claiming that Arthur Hawkwing's grandson, Tirn Sur Paindrag Mashera, previously thought deceased, was in fact alive, hailing him as First Lord of Mayenne. Though Tyr made several attempts to conquer the city, they were ultimately unsuccessful, allowing Mayenne to remain independent. Finally, there was Tarvalin, home to the female Aes Sedai of the Westlands, ruled by the Amyrlin Seat, an ancient and powerful realm founded in the year 98 after breaking, which remained independent for the entirety of its existence, even resisting the might of Arthur Hawkwing, who besieged but never conquered the city. The location where initiate Aes Sedai trained to use the One Power, the women of Tarvalin were the most powerful people in the Westlands, often manipulating other rulers and nations by acting as diplomats, advisors, healers, spies, and warriors in order to subtly or blatantly impose their will upon them. Beyond the mainland, throughout the western and southern oceans, the Seafolk, or Atha'an Mier, ruled over a number of islands including Isle Dashar, Isle Samara, Isle Jafar, Tremalking, Caim, and Sindaking, though they spent most of their lives living aboard ships, captained by a female sail mistress who led the crew and chose their destination, while a male cargo master, often husband to the sail mistress, was in charge of security and conducted trade negotiations. Then there was the female Windfinder, acting as a second-in-command to the sail mistress, who wielded the One Power, using their abilities to manipulate and predict the weather. Male channelers, however, were given the choice of drowning themselves, or being left on a barren island without food or water. The Seafolk were also divided into larger clans, where the leadership structure mirrored that aboard their ships, with a female wave mistress in command of their people, while a male sword master was in charge of security and a windfinder acted as advisor. This pattern was then repeated again for their people as a whole, who were led by a mistress of ships serving as their queen, while a master of blades was charged with their defenses, and a windfinder as counselor. Though the Seafolk were considered exotic but well known by most mainlanders, few realized that another segment of society existed for those traveling traders, as the Amayar were a land-dwelling people who lived secluded lives of peace on their island homes, growing crops, raising livestock, and manufacturing goods, which were then sold by their ocean-loving counterparts. Wanting nothing to do with ships or travel, the Amayar were happy to stay on their islands and submit to the rule of the Seafolk, who for the most part treated them justly and left them to govern their own affairs. Though the Seafolk and Amayar were in many ways polar opposites, this worked in their favor, as neither had anything the other wanted, resulting in a long history of cooperation and peaceful coexistence, with no hint of rebellion or warfare between them. Similar to the Dragon Reborn prophecies of the mainland, the Seafolk had the Jendai prophecies, which foretold that the Koramor would one day lead their people to greater glory and domination over all the seas of the world. Having no proper homeland, the traveling Tuatha'an, or Tinkers, were a nomadic group of traders who lived a pacifist existence following the Way of the Leaf, while claiming they were searching for the Song, though for most of their history, no one truly understood what that meant. Unloved by most peoples, the Tinkers wore bright colors and were always joyful, singing and dancing at every opportunity. In addition to all these human realms and peoples, the Ogier race also called the Westlands their home, living in steadings, ancient secluded regions of peace, where Aes Sedai could not channel the One Power. These slow, intelligent, thoughtful, and long-lived Ogier traveled through magic hidden waygates, gifted to them in the early years of the Third Age by male Aes Sedai, which allowed them to move quickly and quietly throughout the continent. The Ogier were master craftsmen who built many of the great cities of the Westlands. Their true passion was for trees and the natural world, with some possessing great abilities like tree singing, which could encourage and manipulate plant growth. Rarely seen by other humans, most Ogier prefer to live the entirety of their lives in the steading, with no real desire to travel or visit other lands. In fact, their connection to these homelands was so strong that should they spend too much time away, they were inflicted with a deep longing which weakened them and eventually led to their deaths. Separating the Westlands from the rest of the eastern continent, the spine of the world was a vast mountain range, stretching from the Great Blight in the north to the Sea of Storms in the south. With the rivers Aranin, Irelel, and Galen flowing from the spine, these mountains were largely impassable, save for a few areas like Tarwin's Gap along the Mountains of Doom, the Nyam Pass near Shinar, the Jengai Pass next to Kyrian, the path leading to Steading Shangtai, and the southern coastal strip along the Bay of Ramara, which led through the Drowned Lands. Though few humans lived in these mountains, they were home to several Ogier steadings. Just east of the spine lay the barren lands of the Aiel Waste, also called the Threefold Land by the local Aiel population, a harsh, strong, resilient, spear-wielding people who wore veils when they fought, and considered this realm a testing ground and punishment meant to harden them physically, mentally, and emotionally. Due to the extreme heat and scarcity of rivers, the honor-obsessed Aiel clans valued water above almost anything, with water oaths considered unbreakable vows. In the south of the Waste, there was the Turmoil Desert, a land so hot, dry, and lifeless, not even the Aiel dared visit the region. These wastelands had only one city called Ruidion, which the ancient Gen Aiel and their Aes Sedai allies attempted to establish. Yet they eventually died out before completing their work, leaving the city unfinished and abandoned. Although most were forbidden from entering Ruidion, the Aes Sedai felt it necessary to keep the memories of this place alive, and so contacted the other Aiel clans through the dreams of those able to channel the One Power, starting a tradition where chiefs and wise ones visited the city to learn about their history. Though female channelers were greatly respected, those males able to use the One Power were sent north to the Great Blight so they might die fighting the Dark One. Similar to the Dragon Reborn prophecy of the West, the Aiel believed there would one day rise a chief of chiefs who would both destroy and save them, saying, "He shall spill out the blood of those who call themselves Aiel as water on sand, and he shall break them as dried twigs, yet the remnant of a remnant shall he save, and they shall live." Further east, beyond the vast cliffs of the Dawn Mountain Range and Great Rift Canyon, were the lands of Shara, a single, secretive, and secluded nation, originally founded after the breaking of the world, ruled by a single, absolute monarch, either a female Shaboan or male Shabote. A harsh, rigid slave-trading people, their rulers held power for only 7 years, at which point they died and were replaced by their spouse, who then took the throne, remarried, and reigned for their own 7-year term, a cycle referred to as the Will of the Pattern. Despite being accomplished, powerful warriors that defeated both the Trolloc invasion and the attempted conquest of Arthur Hawkwing, who sent up to 2,000 ships and 300,000 soldiers, the people of Shara were mysteriously averse to discussing their victories, refusing to even acknowledge these wars ever occurred. Refraining from almost all contact with the outside world, very few merchants and gleemen were allowed to visit their lands, and even then were only permitted to enter the trade hubs of the east and port cities of the south, with foreigners killed if they ventured away from these regions. Although they had their own magic users, called Ayad, who lived in secluded villages they could not leave without permission, only females had any rights or power, while the males were used as breeding stock to be inevitably killed by around the age of 21, or when their abilities started to develop. While it appeared from the outside that Ayad were little more than slaves, there were some who speculated these female channelers were in fact the true power behind the throne, and it was they who killed the ruler every 7 years. Both the Ayad and slaves were tattooed to show their societal position, with greater marks equaling lesser status, and since these indicators were permanent, it meant once a person was brought low, they could never rise again. Stretching across the far north of the entire continent, the Black Mountains of Doom separated the southern realms from the barren Redlands of the Great Blight, where the Forsaken, Trollocs, Murdral, Drakkar, and other shadow spawn loyal to the evil entity known as the Dark One lived and organized their attacks against the realms of men. In addition to the Dead Sea in the west, a small corrupted town and huge forsaken fortress, the most notable location of the Blight was Sheol Ghul, a black mountain which once existed as a tropical paradise, before becoming the focal point of the Dark One's power and location of his imprisonment by the dragon Theron Telamon. Moving beyond the continent bordered by the Arath Ocean to the west, the Sea of Storms in the south, and Morinel Ocean in the east, there was the Land of the Madmen in the far south, a chaotic, troubled continent of primitive, hovel-dwelling people, where both male and female channelers of the One Power ran rampant without restraint or care for those negatively impacted by their behavior. Though the insanity of the males caused the greatest problems, with their explosive, uncontrolled bursts of magic creating significant seismic activity, the females were also considered dangerous and unpredictable, as they were never able to unify or organize themselves to the extent necessary to control their male counterparts. Though this continent was discovered and visited by the Seafolk, they were unwelcomed by the distrustful population who immediately attempted to kill outsiders. Therefore, the Seafolk forbid travel to these lands. Finally, there were the western lands of Shan-Chan, where Arthur Hawkwing sent a great host of ships and men to conquer the continent, establishing an empire under his son, Luthair Paindrag Mondwyn. Though these forces never returned to the Westlands and thus were presumed lost, Luthair in fact succeeded in his mission by exploiting local rivalries, turning the native nations against each other. Before the arrival of the Eastern Invasion Force, the existing realms of the continent were led largely by treacherous Aes Sedai, existing in a near-constant state of war, with lies, rebellions, coups, and betrayals commonplace, creating a culture that considered honesty and loyalty utter foolishness. Using this volatile situation to their advantage, the invaders began a gradual, 3-centuries-long conquest, with another 2 centuries spent securing their victories, a period referred to as the Consolidation, ultimately ending with Luthair's descendants uniting the entire continent under the rule of an absolute emperor or empress reigning from the Crystal Throne. Rather than establishing some form of hereditary succession, these rulers chose the heir they felt best suited for the position, leading their family members to viciously compete for the opportunity. At some point, Luthair Paindrag heard that his father in the Westlands died, and receiving no further messages, assumed his empire was no more. He therefore resolved that his people would one day return to their homeland and re-establish what was lost. United under a single authority, the Empire of Shan-Chan grew so powerful they eliminated all shadow spawn of the Lesser Blight in the far north, with the exception of some few Drakkar and other creatures, which continue to roam the region. A superstitious people with a strict social and political hierarchy, the Blood, consisting of those descended from the Eastern Conquerors, or later natives raised in status, were at the highest level, though they were then further divided into High Blood and Low Blood. These elite were followed by the Free Peoples, slaves, and Domain, though some slaves who directly served the Blood were considered of higher status than freedmen. Inheriting a deep mistrust for channelers and Aes Sedai, men with these talents were immediately killed, while women with a natural ability to wield the One Power were made Damani, considered the lowest social class, comparable to animals, who were leashed with a special ter'angreal collar, preventing them from doing anything other than what their masters desired. These collars were held by Suldam, greatly honored and respected women who lacked the natural affinity for the One Power, but could be trained in its use. Fielding a massive, ever-victorious army which claimed to be undefeated, the elite warriors among them became Death Watch guards, charged with the protection of the royal family, while the Seekers of Truth acted as a secret police force. Though Ogier also lived in Shan-Chan, they were unlike their thoughtful, peace-loving kin across the sea, acting grim and warlike, sometimes serving alongside humans in the Death Watch Guard. The continent itself was divided into a northern landmass, home to the cities of Sohima, Impharo, Asin Bayar, and Kiart, in addition to a southern territory where the capital of Shandar was located, as well as Kirindad, Anangor, Shan Kefar, Rampur, Tazura, Norin Mashar, and the islands of Salaking, Maram Kashor, and Marendalar, where a major failed rebellion rose against the Crystal Throne. Though the many peoples and cultures around the world established great, diverse, and prominent realms, nothing could endure forever. Therefore, these lands continue to transform over the ages, as there are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time. Love the Wheel of Time or any other series? Then why not check out Audible, where they have the largest collection of audiobooks available. Sign up through the links below for regular membership and get a 30-day free trial, or else try Premium Plus for a 60-day trial and up to 3 free audiobooks. For those who prefer to read their stories, there is the Kindle Unlimited plan, where you get as many ebooks as you wish. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, along with the prequel novel and history book. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Warden of the X, Sir Jeremiah Ironside of House Comsia, Warden of the X, Christ Walder, the Crimson Shadow, Warden of the X, Sir Darren of House Ashford, and Knight of Iron and Ice, Fred Heartless. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and click on the links below, or else go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.